All right, so good news. I think I figured out how to fix the drifting issue on the Switch Lite. Check this out. Huh? Yeah. Let's see a speedrun Link's Awakening with that. Okay, obviously we're gonna have to put an analog stick back in there. This is the one that I did a teardown on, and I also pulled apart the stick and everything just to check it out inside, and it didn't go together very well, at least not to the point where I'd like it to. That's why you don't see a lot of people take the analog sticks apart, because they don't usually go together that easily. You can still get them back together, but to be honest, analog sticks are pretty cheap, and if it doesn't feel great when you do put it back together, it's basically, you might as well order a new one, which is what I did here. So over the weekend, I figured I would replace the stick, put it back in so it's another fully working Switch Lite. But I thought, hey, if I'm gonna be doing it anyway, might as well do it on camera, so anyone who is curious about how it goes back together, just in case you get in a situation where you have a drifting stick and you've called Nintendo and it's not working out with warranty for whatever reason, I always recommend calling Nintendo first, because you have spent money and they should just replace it for you, I would assume. But in the off chance that that's not something that's there, whether you bought it used on Craigslist or from a store that's not helping you out, this, I guess, would be the next option. So here's the thing. The analog sticks are not expensive. They're like $10, which is good, you know, it's okay, cool. It's not an expensive part. You are gonna need some tools. Specifically, you will need, of course, a couple of Phillips head screwdrivers. I would recommend some smaller ones. These have a longer handle, which helps to obviously be able to turn easier, or just more torque on it. And then you also need some sort of tri-wing driver. These are very easy to get. I mean, you can get kits for all of this, because I also recommend having some sort of set of like tweezers to grip any kind of hard to get ribbon cables or anything. There are kits all over Amazon. I'll even link one to you, and you can of course use that going forward on any other projects that come up, or any systems you have to fix, cell phones, all of that as well. But I'll link one down there. So let's get started. We're gonna put this analog stick into here. It's going to be for the left one. I can also point out some of the parts for the right stick, but I really just have to replace the left one. Also, if you have not subscribed yet and you're new here, go ahead and subscribe if you want to see teardowns and stuff like these and keep up on the news in gaming. Make it a push right now to 350,000 subscribers, and maybe we can look into doing some giveaways or something when we get there. So to get started, we have a couple of tri-wing screws on the back. These come out pretty easily, but you can still strip them. So you want to be kind of careful when you are turning them. These have already been opened, of course, so they're a little easier to unscrew. There are two Phillips head screws on the bottom here, located by the USB Type-C charge ports. Go ahead and undo those too. Also, take out an SD card if you have one in there. You just want to go ahead and just drop that out now. We also have two screws at the top here, and I recommend starting to group your screws, as in outside screws. You can put them in a bag if you'd like, or you can put them on a mat with some tape kind of doubled over and just write where they go, because otherwise you're gonna have one big pile of screws and it's gonna become a problem. So keep that in mind. We've done our outside screws now. Go ahead and just put that in a pile. Now we do have clips going around the edges here. I would open the doors while you're at it. It's a bit easier to go from where the speaker is here, because you can kind of grip it a little bit and start to pull it away. But as you start to go around, you can use a fingernail. You can also use a plastic spudger. You can use a gift card, like an old gift card, an old credit card, just to kind of help you start to wedge around. Once you start getting one side up though, the rest will start to come up as well. So it's not too bad once you get to that point, as it'll just start to kind of pop off as you go. I do recommend doing the top part last, since you do have your headphone jack here, and that is actually going kind of through the top of it. So once you get the bottom part up, you can start to kind of lift up very, very carefully, and it'll start to pick up over that headphone jack. All right, so good news, we're in. We do have to start removing some things here, because if we're gonna be getting to the left stick, which is over here, we wanna make sure we have enough clearance. Now, the good thing about the left stick is it's really not buried underneath much. In fact, looking at this, I might be able to get away with not even taking this off. However, we do have some cables running up and around, one underneath of it. So I like to just try to get this metal piece out just so I have a little more room, and it's not too bad to do. So there are really only a couple of screws that hold this guy down. Just kind of look around the edges here. I had 4 that were in. And once you do that, you should be able to pop this off. Keep in mind, there will be like this weird like goop right here that goes to that heatsink. Don't clean it off. Leave it how it is, because when you put it back, it will reset to it. So just leave that. Don't clean that part off or anything. And also look for the top here where you have kind of your buttons up top. Right? That's like your your power, volume. You want to make sure that doesn't get too crazy or get, you know, cut off or anything. It does kind of go towards the top and can get affected by that when you pick it off. Otherwise, though, it's supposed to kind of sit just in this little seat here for it up top. Now, as I said, I am doing the left stick. The right stick is unfortunately underneath the motherboard, and I did a video where I broke this thing all the way down. So if you really do need to do that right stick, you're gonna wanna have to take this whole board out. And that's gonna be, I will say I've taken this apart. That's beyond what a lot of people want to do. It's really not fun to do it, but I do have a full video set up for that right stick. But I just want to kind of put a warning out there that if you have to get that far, it's probably going to be really, really difficult to put together. I've talked to some very, very technically inclined people who know what they're doing with this kind of stuff, and even they don't want to take this apart that far. So you have to be kind of crazy to get to that point. And after doing it myself, I can tell you it is a real pain to get it all the way back together. But fortunately, the left stick is not underneath of the main motherboard. It's kind of on its own. It's on the side, which is good because that means we have to take much, much less out to get to that point. So if your character is moving and running on its own, you can at least fix that with a new analog stick without having to rip everything out. So this is the main side you want to focus on here. When we take the back off, you want to go to its right. I know we're working on the left stick, but if you flip it over, of course, we're on the right side of it, and we're going to be working on this board here. Now, we have a speaker on top. We have several ribbon cables here, and then we have our back button board for the ZL. All of that comes off pretty easily, and we just have to literally just start removing screws all over the place. So the speaker doesn't need much to come out. It's actually held down by, from what I can tell, that one screw there. It has two more screws here, but that's actually just to close up this plastic casing around that speaker. You just remove this screw here, this yellow one, and the whole thing lifts out. You have to unplug it very carefully, but after that, you can see there's much less to have to work with there. I do want to make a bit of a suggestion here before we really start touching the motherboards and everything. There's a cable here and here. Go ahead and unplug this one very carefully. This just connects that main board the sideboard to the main board. And I am going to recommend that you very carefully unplug this battery, okay? Just unplug it like that. I'd rather this entire thing be discharged completely so that nothing crazy happens. Once you unplug that battery, there's no power going to the boards or anything, and it's just a much safer operation to do at that point. But we can go ahead and unclip this cable here as well. And you can see we're already getting to the point where there's really not much more to unscrew. We have two screws here, it looks like, that are kind of anchoring it down. We have a screw here. We are gonna have to take this guy out. Then we also have this guy that I would at least put to the side. I might recommend taking it out, but the problem is getting this guy back in might be a pain. But I'm gonna go ahead and do it just so I can kind of demonstrate what I'm talking about. First off, I'm gonna use some tweezers to kind of pop that guy out there. Because the plastic is kind of hard to get to, and you want to be very careful with these when you pop them up because they can get broken off without too much trouble. So we're going to do that, and then I'm actually going to go ahead and just reset these back down. So once again, make sure you're labeling your screws as you take them away. This is all one piece here, so it just kind of lifts up. This is how they get that kind of that sideways push for ZL here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put that guy over to the side, and at this point, this board, because I've unscrewed the other two, just comes out. So our board is now free, which is great. We can take a quick look at it if you'd like to. You can kind of glance around it and everything, but go ahead and put it to the side. Make sure this rubber membrane, you might as well take that off so it doesn't fall off on you and go somewhere crazy. Put that guy to the side. This rubber membrane, of course, goes over the D-pad. Go ahead and take the D-pad out as well so that doesn't go flying on you. And at this point, we just have to work to put, there we go, our analog stick right back in there. So we do have a nice new white analog stick here. They've been selling these for a while. Remember we got one and we kind of looked around it and people were having a hard time believing that these were already being sold on Amazon and it was the same stick. So that made it kind of easy, I guess, for them to do it. Just the cap had to be changed to white so it matched the Switch Lite and everything. Technically, I guess you could get like sticks from, that'd be interesting to try out, sticks from like regular Joy-Con controllers and put them in here so it's not all white, although that might throw the color scheme off a little bit, but it'd be something interesting to see. So anyway, I'm just going ahead and sit this guy in there. You want to watch that ribbon cable underneath that kind of got buried here. No big deal, that'll come out. Just want to carefully grab it. That's a good spot for where those tweezers come in handy, by the way. It will sit in just one way, all right? So the analog stick that you can buy on Amazon only works one way, all right? So it fits either side and it's just kind of set up so that it'll sit right in there, which is good. Now we have to work on screwing this guy in, all right? And then we can start putting it back together. So I had to improvise a little bit because when I took this apart, I had to put the screws to the side, but one of them, I guess, just got away. I don't know. It's gone. So I had to improvise a little bit. I generally keep a lot of different screws of different sizes and everything, so I still had one, but you can see it's a different color. It's black instead of silver, but it fits fine. It's the same threading and size and everything, so it'll work. It's just another lesson, I guess, to keep your screws in a good spot. Those are 2 screws that I kept loose for way longer than I would have normally for something like this. But again, good idea to either put them in bags as you're working or put them on tape as you're working. So like fold it over packing tape or something. But otherwise, it's in there. Very, very solid. Looks good. I have my cable here kind of picked up because that will go underneath of there if you try to push it down. So keep that in mind. And I also wouldn't flip it over right now to check it just right this second, because this could fall out. This will fall out. A lot of stuff will just fall. Okay, so we have it in there. Let's at least get the other board on top of it. So make sure you put your D-pad back in, any of these other buttons you may have pulled out, and make sure this ribbon cable here is at least kind of picked up. And then we also have our ribbon cable here for our analog stick. It's gonna have to run on top of the board. You're gonna see it in a second. So our board's just gonna sit kind of in here like this, okay? So we have our one cable here. At the same time, as you're putting this down, you wanna grab that cable, which is a good spot for some tweezers. You wanna grab the cable that is attached to that analog stick and just kind of help it through that little space right there on the side, and you should be able to then just kind of push this guy down flush at this point, all right? So it should just sit right in there, just like that. There we go, looks good. Everything still presses there that I can see. And now we gotta start screwing it in and running everything back to how it was. Now we do have a ribbon cable here for that analog stick, this guy right there. We have to help it into this connector here. So you wanna make sure this little lip is up on that side, and we just kind of help it in. This is, again, a good spot for some tweezers. Like I said, tweezers are good to have for these kind of situations. So that's pushed in now. This guy will clip down, and our analog stick is now completely connected to the board. We're just about ready to start closing this up. I have to put our top connectors back on, which is our little button board here. It'll kind of go down through this little gap here that our ZL shares. Plug in. This guy will plug in, speaker back on, and we're good to test. Okay, so everything is plugged back in, everything's screwed back down. We are good to go. Should be good to test. Also plugged the battery back in, cable that connects this board to the main board. And I am gonna go ahead and just kind of, I guess, put the back on. Yeah, because this isn't too much, and I'm pretty confident with what's happened here. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put this guy back on, and then the backing kind of on as well, just so I have an easier time holding this while I test it. Because this is only 4 screws anyway, so this should be fine. We'll go ahead and calibrate it, make sure it all works. Also, real quick, when you go to put the back on, I recommend to start with the top so you can line up your headphone jack here, because then the rest can kind of just push close at that point. Just once you get this top part all lined up and it looks good, the rest should pretty much just clip together just like that. It's just that headphone jack is the one thing you want to double check, and of course make sure your volume and everything works as well. So we're now powering it back up. I have not put the other screws back in, like the tri-wing screws on the back, the top screws or anything. Haven't done that yet. I just want to make sure that the stick works. It looks good, at least. Like the front looks fine on it, I would say, on the left there. I just want to check with calibration and everything to make sure it all worked out and came together well enough. Also, make sure when you do put this back together, you may have a hard time closing it up for some reason. Make sure all these buttons are in the right spot before you start trying to push or really push on it to try to snap it together. Double check these buttons, make sure the D-pad's in right. It's not like some weird diagonal or anything. Also make sure that your snapshot button, your minus and everything is all there as well. So just make sure all that's good. Let's go ahead here. The left stick is working right away. Like I am jumping around the menu, which is good. I guess let's go into the settings and we'll go to where you'd calibrate it normally. Okay, so here we are with the calibration on the left stick. You can see it moves around just fine. Has a nice snapping and everything back. Is not moving on its own, so that's another good sign. Yeah, I'd say this is a successful replacement for that analog stick there. Also clicks in fine, that's how I get to that. So you get that nice click. I think it might be, let me see. It's not as loud as the right stick. It's close though. I would say this was a successful replacement. This is the Switch Lite I haven't used much yet. It's the turquoise, but it now has a new left analog stick. Yes, it is technically aftermarket, so it's not the original one, but from what we've seen so far, some of the original ones have drifting issues. This is just a way for you to replace that left stick if it comes to it. The right stick is much more of a pain. I have a video getting to it, right, where we took the whole motherboard out and everything, and that's something that I think a lot of people won't want to try. You don't have to mess with the left or the right board as much when you have it flipped over. It's that entire side with the heat sink and everything else, and I don't think that's completely something that people want to do. But if you do want to attempt it, check the video where I rip this whole thing apart. I'll leave it down below, and make sure you are bagging like everything, or at least drawing out where you get the screws from, and that way you should be good to go. Okay, and take your time. It's going to take a while. All right, if you think the Joy-Con is difficult, you want to attempt this, make sure you section off a whole afternoon for it, just to make sure you don't have to step away from it, because once you step away, that's when you might get into trouble. I lost a screw because I stepped away from it, so you never know. But thanks, guys, for watching. Let me know what you think about replacing the analog stick in the Switch Lite, and hopefully, I don't know, next year or something, when we maybe get another revision or something like that, maybe Nintendo goes back to the drawing board with them. If they do tough it out till next generation, hopefully they have something a little better in mind for analog sticks like these for a handheld device. Thanks, guys, for watching. Make sure you like the video on the way out if you enjoyed it, dislike it if not, and I'll see you guys next time.